The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel Satan?
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
From a ridge high above the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, greetings and welcome to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad you've chosen to join us in our humble bunker today. It's Sunday, the 18th of January. No, it's not the 18th.
It's 2018. It's the 7th.
It's 2018. Coming again. It is the 7th of January 2018. I knew 18 was in there somewhere. It's going to be an exciting year because honestly, I won't be able to remember what year it is. I hardly know my own name. I mean, come on.
And we're going to be traveling overseas.
What
could possibly go wrong?
Nothing. In fact, we just discovered this morning, she says, taking off her glasses. I don't know why I did that. Many of you probably travel a whole lot more than we do internationally. And so you're going to laugh when I say this, but I just discovered that Italy uses different connectors than the rest of Europe.
Power connectors?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's why I had to order the Italian.
The adapters.
Yeah, yes. The adapter. We already have adapters that are supposed to work. They have multiple versions, little things you push and different pins come out, and it's supposed to work in the UK and Europe and Italy and other places. Not Italy, but Israel. And Jordan, but does not work in Italy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be bad. Trying to nurse
those Italians.
Trying to nurse a single laptop charge for a 2-week trip. That's not going to work well.
Try 3.
Yeah, 3-week trip. That's not going to work well.
No, it won't.
So, interesting. We are looking forward to this year, though. It is, assuming plans don't change, and of course plans always change. But
assume that they'll change.
So we're looking forward to the month of May, where we've got 2 weeks in Israel, followed by Israel, and then a few days in Jordan to visit Petra, which is going to be phenomenal.
Oh, I know. I can't wait to see that. Well, so many things over there. I can't wait to see and hang out with lots of folks that are going to be traveling with us. It's going to be meeting brand new friends and families. So that will be awesome too.
Yep.
Getting to see the Lipkins again.
Yeah. Aaron, don't know if Avi will be there, but we will likely see Aaron Lipkin and just to tour the Holy Land and see the sites we've been reading about in our Bibles for years is going to be phenomenal, especially with the understanding now from the research that we've been doing the last couple of years about the significance of certain locations, Mount-Hermon, the Grotto of Pan, the various archaeological sites. Looking forward to seeing Gilgal Rephaim and the other dolmens. I don't know if we'll see those, many of those when we go to Jordan, but I would like to, because of the connection to the Rephaim.
Yeah. By the way, if you have signed up for the tour, we are looking forward to going with you. The final itinerary will be posted closer to the actual departure date,
around mid-March.
Yeah. So some of you, and I think the reason for that is because they have to make sure that they can get to those locations, because some of them are not always open. Or available because of, frankly, safety.
Yeah. So that we should know that by the middle of March. We have been told that there are a few slots left. So if you're still interested in the tour of Israel, there is still a little bit of time left. There are a few spaces left on the 2 buses that we will be taking with us. The tour will be around 100 people altogether.
Yeah. And we intentionally asked them to cap it at that. They could have gone for 120 people, but that would have had, the buses bursting at the seams. And
right.
We just felt it would be nicer to have a little bit of leg room, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of breathing room so that we're not one more person suddenly overfills the bus or something like that. But as of now, I think we're around 94, 95 people. So
95
again,
is what I saw.
A few spaces left. If you're interested, log on to lipkintours.com. That's LIPKIN, lipkintours.com. And then look for the year 70 tour of Israel, because this will be taking place during the celebration of the 70th anniversary of Israel's independence.
Yes, and we will be in Jerusalem on that very day, the very day that 70 years clicks over.
Yeah. So, just going to be a phenomenal year all the way around. So there's that. In
March, we're going to be in Dallas, so want to make sure that because I, again, don't even know who I am most days, so I'm likely to forget stuff. So March 21st?
22nd through the 25th will be the dates. 21st, I guess, is early registration. That's a Thursday, but 22nd through the 25th is the Friday through Sunday. And, quite a lineup for that, as Bill Salas has been added to the lineup.
Has he?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yay.
Henry Groover, Paul Begley, Carl Gallups, of course, L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Casper McLeod, Rabbi Zev Parat, who we'll hopefully see again when we get to Israel, but he will be in Dallas for this conference. It's at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center. That's in Grapevine, Texas, which is northern suburb. It's very close to the airport, actually.
It's a really great venue it's a beautiful place to stay, great restaurants. All the main presentations are in one room only, so you are going to get to see everybody you want to see. There will be some breakout, workshops given. We had a great time there last year, and I know that this is the fourth year that they've had.
I think that's correct.
Like that.
Yeah,
and so we're excited that they actually invited us back.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to that. Josh Peck will be there doing a workshop.
Christina's going to
be doing a workshop too. So
so good. Also, I don't know if the website's up yet, but the True Legends Conference is scheduled again for about the same time it was last year, at the same venue, as I recall. Yeah. But we don't really know anything more than that. Don't have a website for you yet. Also, I don't know if there are any spots left in the Sardinia tour, Roman Sardinia tour. But if there are, you want to go with that, because that's Timothy Alberino and Steve Quayle and us.
Yeah, that as of... Well, let me look real quick here, because I believe, and of course, because
last time I looked, it was at least 2/3 full, and maybe more than that by now.
Yeah, the website for the tour is truelegendstheseries.com, and now it's saying can't open the site, so I'm not sure what the deal is there. That's because I typed it in wrong. That's what. Com only is COM, not CONM. It still has the link to register.
Oh, well, that's encouraging.
So there are a few slots left at the tour between the tour of Rome and Sardinia, and that's going to be that's going to be something. 5-star accommodations on that tour, and I have found in the research I've been doing about the death cult, if you will, or the cult of of child sacrifice in the ancient Near East, from Canaan. And extending out across the Mediterranean world, which was brought by the Phoenicians, who were the descendants of the Amorites and the Canaanites, that there are several sites on the island of Sardinia that are known to have been locations where child sacrifice was practiced. It ties together with the worship of the former gods, the Watchers, really, because I think you can build a really good case that the Watchers were the Titans, were the Anunnaki, who were the Apkallu of Mesopotamian lore. And the sacrifices to the chief god of the Phoenicians, who founded the Phoenician colony of Carthage, and then other Phoenician colonies around the Mediterranean, their chief god Baal-Hamon is to be identified with Saturn of the Roman pantheon, Kronos of the Greek pantheon, and El of the Canaanite pantheon.
Were the Punic Wars related to the Phoenicians?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. In fact, I was doing some reading on a book, and I tweeted this the other day. It's like, here's how I spent my birthday, watching classic Doctor Who and reading a book about the cult of Molech, which is mentioned in the Bible as the god that people would sacrifice their children to by passing them through the fire. Yeah. Same way that later Phoenicians, 500 years later, were sacrificing to Baal-Hamon, same god.
Yeah.
There's some evidence that suggests that the chief god of the city of Tyre, this was the city from which Jezebel came, where her father was the king and also a priest of the goddess Astarte, the chief god of Tyre was Melkart, and Melkart, scholars agree, just means king of the city. And it's been assumed that means king of the city of Tyre, but there are some scholars who say, well, no, the cart that we're talking about, the QRT part of that name, is actually the netherworld. So an underworld necropolis where the dead go. That's Melkart.
Lord of the Dead.
Lord of the Dead, in other words. In other words, another manifestation of Molech, Baal-Hamon, Saturn, Kronos, El, possibly Dagon.
Possibly Saturn, possibly, fill in the blank.
Right.
Yeah. Lord of the Dead, that's a title that's claimed by many. And we even see that the king of Tyre is in Isaiah 14. It's falling, and suddenly we're talking about Lucifer.
Right, exactly. As Lord of the Dead.
Yes.
Yeah. Duh. Thank you for connecting 2 more dots there, sweetheart.
Oh, honey. I do what you can. Yeah. Who am I?
Because that links the that entity, the rebel from Eden, who is in view there in Isaiah 14, to the shades, the Rapha, who rise up to greet him and say, "You are just as weak as we are now." What does that verse say specifically? Because this is really... Yeah, Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. It rouses the shades, the Rapha, the Rephaim, to greet you, all who were leaders of the earth. Mm-hmm. These were the mighty men of old, the men of renown.
Yes.
In other words, the spirits of the Nephilim. It rouses the shades to greet you, all who were leaders of the earth. It raises from their thrones all who were kings of the nations. All of them will answer and say to you, "You too have become as weak as we. You have become like us. Your pomp is brought down to Sheol, the sound of your harps. Maggots are laid as a bed beneath you, and worms are your covers." That connects to the Rephaim texts from Canaan and the sacrificial meals that were laid out for these shades, the warriors of Baal in one of those texts. And it connects to the horde of Magog in Ezekiel 39. So, yes, it all ties together. And it's interesting that in this book of Molech, the author of the book, if you're curious, by the way, and you can get it at Amazon, I think it's about $35, is named George Heider, Heider. It's about 30 years old. The Cult of Molech, a Reassessment. And Molech is spelled Molek in that, which makes sense.
Yes, because it's MLK.
Right, is the transliteration from the Semitic.
There were no vowels.
Right. Where was I going with this now? Melkart, Molech, Rephaim, King of the Dead. Ezekiel 39 travelers. Okay, now I've lost it.
Okay, now picture the Cubs.
Yes, winning.
It's a high fly ball.
Oh, brother!
You'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah, lots of individual data points that I'm trying to string together.
Well, you were also talking about
narrative.
being the king of the city and the king of the dead, and Lucifer connecting into that, and how it brings it all back around, and
Mount of Assembly, 1,000 points of light. Wouldn't be prudent at this juncture.
Oh, good grief. You are so silly. Well, honestly, that I think there are a lot of people who are benefiting from the geekiness, that the way the Lord has wired your brain and the desires of your heart. When the Lord says he will give us the desires of our hearts, I honestly think, at least in my life, that means that he is changing my heart to want the things that he
bring it in line.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And to a certain degree, he wired me that from the very, before I was even born. He said, okay, this girl is going to be a bit of a geek, and she's going to like these things. Mm-hmm. She's going to like science. She's going to like the arts. She's going to have one of those brains that sort of works both sides at the same time, and so she connects dots. She won't be able to concentrate for very long. She will see a lot of squirrels and want to chase them. She will rabbit trail endlessly, but that's because I've made her this way. Mm. So for that reason, I've often admired people who are able to do the opposite, and that they can concentrate on one thing for years and really drill down into it and become an expert in that area. And I applaud that person, and I take advantage of his or her work, because without that kind of person, someone like you and I who is a dot connector, we would be lost.
Right.
We'd have we'd have no dots.
Exactly. It's being a multidisciplinarian is kind of what we are. David Rohl made that comment when he was trying to connect dots, as he's done very well. I don't agree with all of his work, and the more I know about ancient history, the more I'm finding points of disagreement with David Rohl's research. But I think he was instrumental in kind of starting things. I know his work really inspired Peter Goodgame in his Giza discoveries and in identifying Eridu in an ancient temple of the god Enki as really important in history. What you find are specialists working in their own little silos. You've got the Assyriologists who know everything there is to know about Assyria, but don't really know anything about, Babylon, for example. And it's probably an extreme case because there's so much overlap. I'm sure they do. But you get the point. They know everything there is to know about their specialty, but they don't see how it overlaps into other areas and influence those other areas. And I think we, as in our Bible studies, even in our churches, in Sunday school, and in our Sunday morning sermons, we kind of get the idea that ancient Israel was in its own little bubble. And the only time it was ever influenced by Assyria or Babylon or Greece or Rome was when they were invaded by those countries. And that's not true. They knew what those nations around them believed. And that is why I wrote, The Great Inception, because it dawned on me in reading some of these things like, oh, that's why God parted the Red Sea. It wasn't for special effects. It was to make a statement, a point, not just to Israel and to Egypt. And it wasn't Egyptians, by the way, who were in charge of Egypt at that point in history, but to make a statement to all of the people around about their chief deity, Baal, Hadad, the storm god. That's what that was about. And there is a lot more of that in the Bible that I didn't fit into the Great Inception, because some of it I'm only learning now. And now I finally remembered where I was going with all of this.
I knew eventually you would. Yay!
Yeah, the king of the gods of the Canaanites, was Baal, the storm god, and that's who we run into that name a lot in the Bible. What we don't know, most of us, is that that god deity was also Zeus to the Greeks and Jupiter to the Romans. It was the same deity. Thor to the Germans. Yes. Same deity. There was another deity, a storm god deity, that was supreme in the Indian culture, which wasn't really that far when you look at it. There was a lot of trade between the Indus River Valley civilization and Mesopotamia. There was a lot of cross-pollination of ideas and cosmology between those cultures, and we don't know this because we're just trying to make it in life. When do you have time to study that when you're trying to make it and work 40 or 50 hours a week? But I always thought, based on what little I knew of Roman cosmology, what I remember from mythology class in high school was that Jupiter was king of the gods. Okay, Jupiter and Hera and so on and so on. Except that wasn't true in a big chunk of the Roman world, especially in North Africa, where the Carthaginian, the Phoenician influence was really heavy. The chief god there, even though Jupiter was supposedly king of the gods, the chief god there was still Saturn, Baal-Hamon, the one that they sacrificed their kids to. Because when you remember Greek cosmology, Kronos tried to keep his children from overthrowing his rule by swallowing them as soon as they were born. Now, here's something to think about. It just occurred to me the other night. I was talking to Nicole about this yesterday, our daughter. If that legend is based on some grain or kernel of truth from the ancient past, from when the Watchers descended on Mount Hermon, if Kronos, Jupiter, Saturn, not Jupiter, but Kronos, Saturn, was actually Semyaza, the leader of the Watchers, what children did he eat and why?
Yes, exactly. I think that's a really good question.
What grain of truth is there in that, in the original story? Because I don't think that's in the book. That's not in the book of Enoch. It's certainly not in the Bible.
Well, the reason that we're told that these ancient gods destroyed their own children was because there was usually a prophecy of some kind saying that their children, one of their children, would take over.
Right. And that's a pattern that is repeated over and over in the ancient Near East, where Anu was replaced by Enlil, who was replaced by Marduk in the Babylonian cosmology. To the Hittites, it was Anu, then Kumarbi, then Teshub, the storm god.
Now, here's a question. Is it possible, and again, this is really speculation, but is it possible, we see over and over again that the fallen realm, they don't quite understand. They know Scripture better than we do. And if they don't quite understand it, then the fact, it's only the power of the Holy Spirit that enables us to see it accurately at all. They don't have the power of the Holy Spirit. They're depending upon only their own interpretation. Is it possible that that Garden of Eden promise, there will be enmity between your seed and his seed, Satan's seed?
Yeah.
So seed of the woman, seed of... So
seed
is it possible
Nakash,
when they came down and hybridized that seed that there's someone said, wait a minute, her seed is now your seed. What's that mean? Will your seed now take over?
Don't know. I need to do more work on that because this is an aspect of that question I had not considered until just recently, because it only recently dawned on me. It's like the child sacrifice required of the worshipers of Baal-Hamon, the Canaanites and then Phoenicians.
Right.
It makes sense in context of the myth of Kronos eating his children. But,
right. But let me just explain really, just in case you're sitting there and going, wait a minute, she's not saying that Jesus Christ was, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that the fallen realm misinterpreted God's pronouncement. His when God said, this is what's going to happen down the line, you're going to be destroyed by her seed. He will be the one who redeems all of this. He's my promise to mankind. So is it possible? I think it's understood, and I think that it's a correct understanding that when Semyaza and his bunch came down, they thought, well, we'll just destroy them. We'll just so take over their DNA that we'll just get rid of humanity altogether. But is it possible that there was this somehow, somewhere in their little fallen realm, somebody came along and said, my Lord, what if what he was really saying is that one of your kids is going to take over and get rid of you? Yeah.
And interestingly,
misinterpretation.
Sure.
But Jesus Christ, no, not part fallen angel at all. Not even going there. He was all man, all divine.
Right.
Both. And that is a mystery. How you can make that statement, it is not something we can understand scientifically. You merely have to have faith, and that's really comes down to that idea of faith.
Right. Yeah, that is one of those areas where you don't have any, that faith that's the only way you can take it, because there's no way to scientifically understand it. Yeah, I'm looking at... We've been looking at a new translation, a relatively recent translation anyway, of the Book of Enoch by George W.E. Nicholsburg and James Vanderkam, called the Hermenia translation, Hermeneia. It's a series of translations that Hermenia is not a reference to Mount Hermon.
No.
In other words, and they collated a number of different texts because there are a number of existing copies of the Book of Enoch that have been found all over and in different languages. And because we don't have a chain of evidence for those, what they've done is they've tried to put together the best possible translation into English from the best available manuscripts. And it's heavily footnoted to show, this is why we translated this way, and this manuscript says this, but this one says that, and that kind of thing. But one of the interesting things was that they settled on is in First Enoch, which is in the Book of the Watchers, which is like the first 36 chapters or so of the Book of Enoch. Chapter 7, verse 2, this newer translation shows that, and this is a little different from the old R.H. Charles translation that most of us have seen, which is free and available on the internet.
And is referenced in the Red Wing Saga, by the way.
Yes, which goes back to the 19th century. Charles was, 18...
I think he was translating it in 1870s.
1870s, that sounds about right. Yeah. But anyway, this newer translation combines, again, manuscripts that have been discovered since then. And when they put together their translation, it shows that there are multiple generations that descended from this first incursion by the Watchers and humanity. Verse 1 of chapter 7, these and all the others with them took for themselves wives from among all them such as they chose, and they began to go into them and to defile themselves through them, and to teach them sorcery and charms, and to reveal to them the cutting of roots and plants. And they conceived for them and bore to them great giants. And the giants begot Nephilim.
Yeah.
So the Nephilim weren't the product of the Watchers and human women. It was the second generation, according to this.
Exactly. And that does seem to make sense. So the Nephilim also had children.
Yes, and to the Nephilim were born Eliud. That's Eliod, which is a word that in Hebrew means God of glory. And they were growing in accordance with their greatness. They were devouring the labor of all the sons of men, and men were not able to supply them. And the giants began to kill men and to devour them. And they began to sin against the birds and beasts and creeping things and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh, and they drank the blood. Then the earth brought accusation against the lawless ones.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and again, not all translations say that.
Right. And we're not looking at this for some sort of absolute truth, because again, the book of Enoch is not in Scripture, and it's not in Scripture for a reason.
Yeah, it's referenced a couple of places, but beyond that, no.
Yeah. So the question is, how were there multiple generations? And as the bloodline was diluted, say the Watcher blood was diluted in successive generations, were there different types of seed or progeny that came forth? Don't know.
All you can do is just guess. I mean, there's really no chain of evidence to figure it out.
Exactly. And of course, the flood basically wiped all of this out. In chapter 8, in verse 9, it says, "And now look, the daughters of men have borne sons from them, giants, half-breeds. And now look, the spirits of the souls of men who have died make suit, and their groan has come up to the gates of heaven, and it does not cease to come forth from the presence of the iniquities that have gone upon the earth." This is chapter 9 of the Hermania translation of the book of Enoch. So, yeah, it's intriguing, and I don't think we can ever do more than just speculate. Certainly not going to build a doctrine on this, but what was it that inspired the myth of Kronos eating his children?
Well, I think so too. There's a note here. The Greek texts, and this is I don't think this is the Mecklenburg translation, but I think it's the Lawrence translation. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's another 19th century translation.
Yeah, this one, a note says, the Greek texts vary considerably from the Ethiopic text here. Mm-hmm. One Greek manuscript adds to this section, and they, the women, bore to them the Watchers 3 races. First, the great giants. The giants brought forth, some say slew, not brought forth, but slew the Nephilim. And the Nephilim brought forth or slew the Eliud.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in a sense, is consistent with the ancient cosmology of the
Titanomachy.
Yeah, and the Gigantomachy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. I'm going to share this page with you.
Yeah, thank you. And the multiple generations of gods replacing one after another. Again, Anu, Enlil, Marduk. In Canaanite cosmology, you don't have a god prior to El, but El was certainly replaced by Baal. And of course, in the Greek cosmology, you've got...
just send it over to you. It's from the Q Bible.
Uranos... Thank you, sweetheart. Uranos replaced by Kronos, who was replaced by Zeus.
Yes. Which, the successive generations, so it could be brought forth and slew. Both are correct.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well...
Well, there's also a commentary on the Book of Enoch that we've purchased by Nicholsburg and Vander Kamen.
Have not had really... present.
Have not had an opportunity to dig into that yet.
No, and we still intend to eventually do a Bible study, fellowship, just taking a look at the Book of Enoch.
We'll call it an Enoch study.
Yeah, because Bible just means book. Mm-hmm. The book is what the Bible is. It's the book. Hi. We'll just sort of do a study of it, and we're going to use that book as reference and some other texts as well.
Right.
We don't really know for sure when we're going to be doing that. We'd hope to do it right after the first of the year, but we're still so busy doing other things. But you can also read these things. Mm-hmm. You can find the links, and I know not everyone has the time, and that's why podcasts are so nice, because you can just take half an hour or an hour, and you can listen and learn. Mm-hmm. Quickly while you're doing, you can multitask, you can do something else, and it will sort of feed your brain while you're doing that. That's what I love about podcasts. Mm-hmm. Are you leaving, Sam? I find this boring. Sam?
And as he's walking away, he's dragging his binky behind him. It looks like he's got a robe and a train.
I do have a robe. I've got this is my cape. You need to go outside?
No, I think he's coming back to, he just wanted to be noticed. Yeah. You weren't talking about me, so boring. Well, yeah, there are a lot of things that are coming together as we're researching this, and that book about the cult of Molech, a reassessment, it cites some other research that I need to follow, some other rabbit trail stuff, but it indicates that apparently there was a special role played by the pig in the ancient Near East as a sacrificial animal for these special cult feasts for the dead, which is why it was not usually consumed by humans outside of that ritual, and why it was probably, it's speculated that that's why God said, don't eat pork, don't eat pig, because I don't want
Somehow the pig was considered sacred to the fallen or something?
Yeah, there was a link to the chthonic gods, the gods of the dead, the gods of the netherworld. In the same way that God is very clear about Moses, when you sacrifice these animals for, Yahweh, these are things that need to be totally burned on the altar, and specifically referred to the liver several times because the liver was used in telling the future by the pagans.
Well, speaking of telling the future, we're going to move away from the old stuff and go to the new stuff, and because this is P.I.D. radio and we talk about anything and everything, and we're just so right now. Both Derek and I are really digging into a lot of things that have to do with the ancient world, and I do it for the Red Wing Saga. He's doing it for these new nonfiction books he's putting out this year. So, it's going to be an exciting year.
Oh yeah,
and we'll be better prepared, I think, to go to the Middle East when we go there this year. But as of this morning, a volcano that has not erupted in history, in written history, unless, of course, it was one of two that were just sort of mentioned in the 17th century by a pirate. He didn't name the island, but a volcanic...
Mount R?
Yeah, pretty much. Papua New Guinea, which has a lot of volcanoes, there's an island there that it started spewing ash. 500 people live on that island. They have been evacuated completely because the fear is by volcanologists that this will be much more than ash, that this will actually have pyroclastic flow. It will actually really erupt in the way we tend to picture volcanoes erupting. Most eruptions are just ash, which isn't good because it gets on your clothes and on you and in your water.
It's corrosive.
It is. Yeah. It's very much so. But this may have been mentioned previously, as I said, in the 17th century. But if not, then this is the first time since records were kept on volcanoes that this has erupted. So it's sort of a surprise, and we're seeing more and more. I follow eruptions online all the time. That's one of my search terms, and so I see volcano come up daily, and it's usually something that is relatively known. So that's been erupting for a long time or erupts every year or this and that. This one really struck me because it was a big surprise.
We humans have a bad habit of assuming that because something hasn't happened within our memory that it'll never happen. So why should we prepare? We've never lost power here.
That's the thing. I mean, there may be places all around the world that, this is a volcanic island, and most islands that just, sort of in that area probably have an old or dormant or not erupted since we ever knew volcano sitting on it. But it seems to me that more and more, Sam? Bored. I am just so bored. More and more areas of the world, volcanoes are waking up.
We see stories about the Yellowstone supervolcano, it seems, every couple of weeks. Remember a few years ago, BBC did sort of a docudrama on what would happen if it blew up, and it was sort of like, okay.
It was so poorly done, it just
Pretty
sort of made you think, okay.
Yeah. Scientists, though, have discovered a huge body of magma underneath New England now.
Yes, exactly.
That was reported about 3 weeks ago. Now, they say that it's not of the size and scope of the supervolcano of Yellowstone, and it's so deep that it would be a long, long time before it would ever reach the surface. But
the problem is it's there, so if the Lord comes along and says, okay, everybody wake up now, pushes the big red button, it will erupt.
Yeah. It just shows that the Earth is not static and unchanging. Things are constantly moving and shifting underneath the ground beneath our feet. And even though if you live in New England, don't panic. Because we're talking a long time scale.
But the other thing is, even if we haven't seen that there's magma everywhere. Mm-hmm. It may just be really, 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 really deep at the Earth's core. Eventually, the Lord can do whatever He chooses to do. You can have an area which has no magma, if indeed that even exists, and He will put it there. If He chooses to have some area erupt like a volcano, it will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are days coming when we're going to see the Earth, what Isaiah says, reel like a drunkard. Mm-hmm. We've seen it ring like a bell. Go back to 2004 and that devastating tsunami and earthquake. The quake that set off the Fukushima nuclear reactor and created that issue.
Yes.
Caused the Earth to reverberate and ring like a bell for days afterward.
Yeah, well, Jesus told us that we would be able to see signs beginning as with childbirth.
Earthquakes in diverse places.
It's pretty obvious to a woman who's getting close to having that child that those signals are coming along. And so she can start, packing her clothes and telling her husband, it's going to be another week or two. And these signs are coming. They are here in many cases, and they are becoming stronger and more frequent. So I think we're getting closer and closer to the return of Christ, and that's the only reason I bring this stuff up. Mm-hmm. It's not to panic.
No. We're not promised a rosy path or an easy path between now and the end, but we know that the end is, winning.
Yeah,
the good guys win at the end. So,
well, that is so true. We are. Derek and I often talk about things that have to do with, total left turn here, that have to do with technology.
Oh, yeah.
And we do that on Sci Friday all the time. And the fact is that Derek and I have been watching a show called, and many of you probably already seen it, called Black Mirror, and it is an adults-only show. Do not let your kids watch this or your grandkids. Don't encourage them to do it. They're probably sneaking and watching it anyway, but don't recommend it to them.
Right.
But we will tell you what's there if you don't feel comfortable watching these adult situation shows. It's essentially showing the worst that could happen if technology allows the evil that is in men's hearts to flourish through technology.
It's what you call a force multiplier in military parlance.
Yeah, that's a really good. In fact, there are military shows that show how the military would use it. Mm-hmm. We just watched one that I thought was really compelling, and it was and sadly, we are very close to this moment in time, if not already there. And this would be a conversation to have with Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, who wrote Future War.
Yeah.
Future War? Is that the name of it?
Yep.
The soldier who has an implant, and the implant aids him in using augmented reality in order to see maps and things like that. And you only find out when you're about 2/3 of the way through this show that it also suppresses a lot of things and helps the soldier to better obey orders. Mm-hmm. You're told to go in and kill everybody in a building.
Right,
that sort of thing.
It's set in kind of a post-apocalyptic scenario where there are people who are nicknamed roaches, who are apparently in a sort of hybrid human something.
That's what the soldiers
monstrous.
are told, and they appear to be monstrous to the soldiers because that's what the implant actually sort of augments reality and makes them see that. The fact is that it also gets into the idea of a pure human bloodline.
Yeah. It combines a couple of really disturbing trends in the recent human past. One of the things military planners have had to try to work around when they started keeping statistics on modern warfighting. In World War I, the guys who started tracking this noticed that soldiers in World War I, confronted by the enemy, would the majority of them wouldn't even pull a trigger on their guns. And those who did would fire deliberately above the heads of the onrushing enemy because they just didn't want to kill another human being. We humans have a natural aversion to killing our fellow humans. They found that by switching the targets that soldiers practiced with, from the round bullseye type targets to targets shaped like humans, that for World War II, they were able to increase the percentage of soldiers who would actually fire at the enemy. But it still was like only 30% would actually shoot at the enemy. The other 70% either wouldn't pull the trigger or shot above the enemy or whatever. So in modern training, soldier training, they're using video games, basically virtual reality, to train soldiers and desensitize soldiers to shooting at other humans. And this is something that we've talked about in years past, about our problem, our concerns with first-person shooters for kids, because it desensitizes average kids to shooting and committing harm to other people.
It does, and I would say that social media is helping that even more. You don't have to be
dehumanizing other people, and that's something that, that's something that nations have done to try to stir up patriotic sentiment in their people,
which gets us back to the bloodline.
It gets us back to the bloodline, and of course to the to this particular episode, where they've taken that idea of training using AI a step further, or virtual reality a step further, by basically implanting it into the head of the soldier, so they can't tell the difference between reality and what is being projected into their cerebral cortex.
And whenever they have good kills during the day, they get rewarded with very pleasing dreams at night.
Exactly. So it's really disturbing, and that's just one of the stories in Black Mirror. But it takes where humanity is heading already and looks at how, as you say, how technology will enhance the evil that's already inside our human hearts. I know I complained about the title of the series. I'm finally starting to warm to the title of the series, Black Mirror. Black Mirror is what your computer looks like when it's turned off, because it's essentially a black mirror. Or a television hanging on the wall.
Exactly.
They look like black mirrors, right?
Exactly. Well, it's holding a mirror up to humanity and showing the darkness that's in our hearts. So I'm starting to warm to that title. But the idea, one of the characters in this episode that we were telling you about, a woman who helps this soldier when he starts to these quote unquote roaches that are the enemies of mankind.
The monsters.
Yes, exactly. They've figured out a way to short circuit the implants, and so this main character soldier starts to see them as they really are, and he's shot, so she's helping him. And she tells him the story. This is where we get the backstory to whatever actually happened. And she said it started out with they were controlling how we traveled, and then they started taking DNA from everybody voluntarily, and then it was a requirement. And then later on, the psychiatrist who is helping this soldier to quote unquote recover, he says, "Do you really?" When he realizes that the soldier has figured out what the system is doing to him, do you really want these, misfits, these degenerates? They're prone to disease, and it's eugenics. It's nothing more than eugenics.
Right. Creating the master race. But
and
creating
it starts
eugenics
by getting a DNA database.
Exactly. And then, when you think about it, that's where the transhumanist movement is leading. For the future of humanity, for the survival of the species, we need to eliminate the unfit.
Yes.
Of course, the problem there is who decides who or what is unfit.
Yeah. Well, it's disheartening at the very least to see where humanity is heading. But for those of us who understand that there is no regeneration without the blood of Jesus Christ, there is no true change of heart without the Holy Spirit, and again, the saving blood of Jesus Christ. You cannot be redeemed without that. Thinking that somehow mankind is going to use tech to achieve salvation and apotheosis? No, we're not going to eliminate sin because we have eliminated any aspect of the human genome.
Yeah, we cannot breed that out.
It's not in your DNA.
Right. And that leads to another story that is somewhat disturbing. This we talked about on Sci Friday this past week. The research being done at Ohio State University on using what they're calling tissue nanotransfection, or TNT.
Oh, yeah.
To introduce, or to convert skin cells into stem cells that could then repair any injured or aging tissue. And, aging tissue, of course, people out there who are wanting to live forever will see that and go, oh, sweet. Or just people who want to look young forever will jump on this technology, start investing in it. I'm sure we'll start seeing modern day equivalent of...
Get your nanofacial.
Yeah, exactly. Your stem cell facial.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to start seeing, if we're not seeing it already, I don't travel in those circles where I look for stuff like that. So for all I know, that may be out there already.
Yeah, we'll have to
but
look.
when you combine it with some research from about 10 years ago in South Korea, a team at the Robot Intelligence Technology Lab at Korea's Advanced Institute of Science and Technology published a paper in which they describe a process to create artificial DNA. And the end result of this, or the end goal of this, is to try to figure a way for humans and robots to somehow procreate with one another. Again, the seed of the Nakash and the seed of the virtual Nakash and the seed of the woman somehow coming together. They believed that they were able to create artificial chromosomes in this research. And then if you can take this TNT technology to deliver those artificial chromosomes into human cells and create stem cells using artificial chromosomes, what do you have?
Well, yeah, I'd have to read how the research. Artificial chromosomes have been around for a long time, but the idea is that you convert the organic material into code. Mm-hmm. Because the belief is that we're nothing more than code.
Nothing more than code.
Suit.
Yeah, on a biological substrate. Yeah. Meat computing.
Yeah. Do you want to go outside?
It's...
Do you need to go? No.
She's back here and you need somebody to lift up the binky. Open the door to my bed, please, is what Sam is saying.
There you go.
So it's disturbing, but it is where the transhumanist movement is going. And,
well, think about it this way: if you marry a robot and you want to have kids with this robot who loves you so very much, and the two of you want to have a child together, well, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have a coded system.
And there are already there are surveys out there showing that among millennials, a significant percentage of them would rather have a relationship with a robot than with another human.
Yeah, and most of those are men, but there are a growing segment of young women who would rather, because they frankly don't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
I want all I want the good parts. In fact, if he can cook, that would be really good too. And if he could keep the house too. And then just, take me to bed when I choose.
Exactly. I want the physical benefits without any of the emotional commitment.
Yes, that's the bottom line for both.
Right, exactly. But that's not how we humans were designed.
No, and if an artificial intelligence actually does become sentient, he may not want that either.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It is sad that we're seeing this kind of wide-eyed naivete amongst transhumanists, that somehow this is all going to work out and be wonderful, and we're going to create heaven on earth by just eliminating all the bad parts of our human nature. Mm-hmm. And there is no, as you said, there's no way to do that short of the regeneration that will come when Christ returns. I mean, we have a partial rewrite of our internal code, if you want to say that, when we accept Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit indwells us, and we begin to change because the things that we used to want, we no longer want. We struggle against it yet. We're not perfect. We are not completely free from sin. We still sin, as John wrote, every day by thought, word, and deed. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. I'm not saying that you become perfect when you accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, but you begin to move away from that old nature toward a new nature. There is nothing in the transhumanist movement. There is nothing about trying to create an artificial construct for the engram that they believe you are, your code, that eliminates that part of human nature. If somehow they overcome the technological, scientific hurdles, the medical obstacles to creating an artificial suit in which you can live forever, basically they will just create an immortal who is prone to sin and no longer constrained by the cost-benefit analysis. If I do this thing, I might get killed. If I do this, I'm going to live forever. So what the heck does it matter if I do this? You're basically creating hell on earth. You
really are. And moving in another direction, if you have a sentient artificial intelligence that comes along, it will want to be worshipped eventually. And we're going to get back into the old idea of Moloch and sacrificing children, because you cannot create meat suits over and over again without a substrate. Right. I'm going to sacrifice this imperfect child to get the perfect child.
Mm-hmm. Or
just to get my new body.
To get the upgrade that I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because apparently that's what was done back in the day. I sent a trading vessel out in order to recover my investment, make sure that the gods will smile on my ship and make sure that it returns from India with the spices that I've paid for. I'm going to sacrifice my child so the gods will be pleased.
Good grief, that's hideous.
Yeah. Oh, it is, but that's humanity. That's under the influence and believing the delusion spread by the old gods.
Good grief.
Well, it just on a more practical sense, I can't figure out why anybody thinks it would be a good idea to agree to an upgrade where you're connected directly to the internet. I mean, because if you can access information from the internet, okay, it's a two-way communication. I mean, read and write.
Yeah. And
so you're being fed, and that's part of the underlying message of that episode of Black Mirror with the guys with the AI, the augmented reality implants. It basically is twisting your reality. I mean, the final scene shows a soldier standing there in front of an idealized vision of his home. He's a hero. He's got medals now, and his memories have been rewritten, so he doesn't remember killing the humans.
There's a beautiful wife waiting for him.
Beautiful wife. And when you pull back, you see the actual reality. It's standing in front of a rundown place. It's got graffiti on it.
And no one there to meet him.
And no one there to meet him. But he doesn't know the difference.
Right.
Because he's being fed this. So if you're connected to the internet directly, and here's the other thing, if you've got code that allows for your mind to directly interface, because you'll need some sort of translator between your brain and the internet, anything that is coded can be hacked.
Yes.
So why would you directly wire your brain into the internet knowing that there's a possibility? Because as soon as that's happened, somebody's going to try to figure out a way to hack it and hack your brain.
Remind me that hacking story here in a second, because I want to get to that. But before I do, I want to make sure I mention the story, because here's the headline. The AI that can read your mind in a chilling Black Mirror-style machine that recreates the image you're thinking about by decoding your brain signals.
Oh, yeah.
This is an algorithm that literally takes a look at the signals that your brain is giving off, the waveforms, and decide and where it's taking place in your mind. And they're not terribly accurate, but they are chilling enough, I think, because the basic forms are there. And in some cases, they are very, very accurate.
Yeah.
Very, very close to it. So if you're looking at a duck, it's clear that the thing sees the colors you're seeing. It sees the basic shape you're seeing. Eventually, these algorithms will be able to know exactly what you are looking at.
Right.
Without having to see through your eyes, is simply looking at your brain. So if you've got an implant and it's reading the waveforms in your brain, yes. And once it sees what you see, then it can twist it. Yeah. Two-way communication. And the hacking thing, I wanted to get to that because...
the story about the Intel bug?
The Department of Defense has solicited...
Oh, right.
To change their cloud structure to one service.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get bids for one company to rule them all.
Yeah, this was put out, a solicitation put out in September. And isn't this funny? It's called the Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure, or JEDI.
Yes, I know.
So they're wanting to create a single, what they're calling it, a tailored acquisition for commercial cloud infrastructure and platform services at all classification levels. Now,
all classification levels.
Yeah. Now, I can understand why they would want to do that, because there are problems that have been caused on the battlefield. They found this back in the first Gulf War, back in 93, was it? Or was it 91 when we went in?
First Gulf War? That was in 93. January of 93.
Was it 93? No, it was 91.
No, 91.
Because
January
Clinton
was
right. President by, because 91, George H.W. Bush was riding high, and then the economy tanked and Bill Clinton got elected. Yeah, so 91. Because planes being flown, and I'm just using this as for example, I don't know the specifics, but I heard from somebody who was in a position to know, who was active duty military at the time, that planes, for example, flown by Marine Corps pilots, say flying FA-18s, were on a different computer program, a different communications program, different software package than the Army units on the ground. And so they couldn't identify friend versus foe. And so there were some friendly fire casualties taken because the Army had agreed to use one contractor's software package while the Marine Corps had used another, and the Air Force had used another, and the Navy had used another. So they weren't talking to each other the way they should.
Right.
So I can understand why they would want to syncretize everything and bring it all together.
Why you want all those eggs in one basket?
But the downside of that, right, is that you give attackers one target, basically, instead of multiple targets.
Yes.
So there are advantages and disadvantages to both ways of doing.
But it also makes
things.
it easier for a sentient AI to take over.
Right. Next step towards Skynet.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The Jedi Skynet.
Well, and again, as we said, if it can be coded, it can be hacked. This is why I've got strong reservations about Bitcoin.
Yeah, me too.
On top of
it's already been hacked.
On top of the fact that it's not backed by anything.
No.
I mean, at least, fiat currency, at least you got a piece of paper. I mean, it's only worth what you believe the piece of paper's worth, but at least you got a piece of paper there.
But it's on my screen, right?
Yeah. I'm holding this piece of paper here. It's not like it can vaporize out of your hand, which Bitcoin or others ostensibly could. Now, yes, I recognize that it'd be more difficult than that because there are some very beefy algorithms involved in verifying the transactions and backing them up in a distributed network. So there's not one point of attack for Bitcoin or the other cryptocurrencies.
Well, let me tell you, there are better ways to if you want to actually get return on your investment, buy some food.
Beans and stuff that's going to last a while.
Yeah.
Something that's tangible. That's my problem with it. It's not tangible. And at some point, the bankers who've been ruling the world for generations, if not centuries, if not millennia, are going to say, we've had enough of you people working outside the system, and we're going to impose our own cryptocurrency on you, and you're all going to be part of this system or else. But there's a story that just came out a couple of weeks ago that we need to point out. Actually, just this past week, in fact.
Spectre chip?
Is that what they're calling the problem with the
Spectre chip flaw?
Yes. This has been reported as of Wednesday of this past week, that Intel computer chips affected by a bug that makes them vulnerable. And according to the Register, which is a tech-oriented news site out of the UK, the bug lets some software get access parts of a computer's memory that are normally set aside to protect things like passwords. And making matters worse, apparently this flaw affects all Intel chips from the last 10 years.
Exactly.
Which means Windows machines, Macs, which have all switched over to Intel chips, and a number of others. This is kind of bad.
Get now, the old AL book out.
That's it, because that's on the old ARM or Motorola chip.
Motorola chip.
Yeah, it's the old G4 Motorola
ARM
chip.
chips are also effective.
ARM issued a press release later in the week that said, no, actually, it's not. We're not.
Okay, this is dated on Friday. And it says Intel and ARM chip design flaws.
Yeah, well, ARM came out and said, "Sorry, no, we're not vulnerable to this exploit."
Okay.
So whether they are or they're not, I mean, the point is that this is something that affects almost every. Most of the computers put out there within the last few years by the major manufacturers, Apple, HP, Asus, Acer, whatever, they're all using, many of them are using Intel chips. And if the ARM chips are affected, the ones that aren't using Intel are using ARM. So, well,
exactly. And honestly, bottom line is don't download anything that you don't know for 100% certain is safe. So go to the Apple store. It doesn't mean that they're 100% safe, but nearly everything there has been vetted in some way. And especially if you've seen lots of downloads and the reviews are really good. But if you're just, seeing, okay, this guy says this software is really good and it's going to help you to spoof this or do this or download this or whatever, don't do it. And be really careful when you click on links in your messenger programs and various other apps within social media. Lots of those are just bots that have either hacked another account and they're using that or created a fake account, or they've just hacked Facebook, because Facebook is also liable to be hacked, as are all the social media sites. If you're online, you're likely to be hacked eventually. So be really careful when you download software, and have some sort of reliable software virus program in place, even in your Macs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had to, Mac users have for a long time just been kind of coasting along, not having to worry as much about hackers and malware as Windows users, just because the majority of the world is running on Windows. But that is changing. I mean, Windows, let's be honest, since Windows XP really has not been great. Windows 8 was okay, but Windows, Windows 7, Windows ME, remember that? Remember that abomination?
Oh, no,
and Windows 10.
I can't get that out of my head now, thank you.
Yeah, just not fun. So anyway, it's just a reminder that anything that gets connected to the internet, anything that is coded, can eventually be hacked. Yeah. And just keep that in mind when people start talking about direct implants in the brain to get onto the internet, and this is how we're going to live forever, is we're somehow going to upload our consciousnesses into the cloud. Come on, blue screen of death.
There was another Black Mirror episode that I thought was really good, and it sort of works with this story. The World Health Organization has announced that they now recognize excessive gaming as a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
There are other disorders that have to do with social media and constantly taking selfies, referred to as selfitis. That the World Health Organization is being asked to consider as legitimate health disorders. Mm-hmm. I think that the case can be made that at the very least, social media is changing us, and it may be changing us to where we are literally becoming addicted, much like a drug. Mm-hmm. Because it affects similar centers in your brain, and if you don't get that fix, very often, then you suffer. Mm-hmm. One of the episodes had to do with a world that is so reliant on social media feedback that everything is reliant on that, and it's like having your credit score, except it's your social media score, and if it's below a certain level, you don't get the perks.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we could upgrade your airline ticket, but you're below a 4.2 average rating. It's like, no, I'm a 4.2. No. That last ding you took from that person outside who doesn't even know you dropped you to a 4.18. So I'm sorry, we can't upgrade you. You're going to have to take the next flight.
Yeah, you can't rent a car. You can't, you don't get any of the great apartment complex offerings. You want to live in this we can get you a loan. We can reduce the price for you, but I'm sorry, your score isn't high enough.
Yeah, we only want social media influencers, those who can lead others to, come to our place, and you're not quality enough. It was horrifying to see what happened. And the only happy person in the whole episode was the one who just decided to chuck it all and said, "You got a 1.4. What's the matter? Are you a serial killer?"
Played by Cherry Jones, one of my favorite actresses.
Yeah, it's like, no, she just decided that had enough, quit playing the game. I don't even look at my score anymore. I don't care. But yeah, we're going in that direction because there are teens. In fact, I remember a story from this past year in the Washington Post about teens who are addicted to, I don't think it was Instagram, but it was some app like that where you constantly were posting photos. Oh, here's a photo of my stuffed animal. Isn't he cute? And, you get uprated or downrated, voted, depending on the score. And people the kids were so obsessed with earning points in this social media network that they were basically withdrawing from actual contact with other people. Yeah. Because they were too busy working on trying to improve their scores.
Well, you could almost make a case that back in the day when you had, what was it?
Tamagotchi?
Tamagotchi and things like that. Neopets and various sites where you had to go in and raise your pet. Mm-hmm. It was looking at children to see what you could get a child to do for nothing but virtual feedback.
And the ultimate end game, and I think this manifests in a lot of ways in our society, is about the fallen realm getting humanity to dehumanize itself. Mm-hmm. Thousands of years ago, it involved a physical commitment. Here, we'll trade you this secret forbidden knowledge if you'll let us have access to your women so we can procreate and dehumanize the bloodline by physically diluting the bloodline. Well, that didn't work out well for those watchers involved in that. They're in chains and gloomy darkness, according to 2 Peter. But they're getting us to do it to ourselves, to withdraw from actual contact with other humans so that we can interface with screens and ultimately, perhaps, mate with robots, or just engage exclusively in physical relations with
iron and clay mingling
robots.
together.
Iron and clay. Yes, iron and clay. Well, yeah, I think that's what the end game is here. And the other way it manifests, of course, and I think this is ironic that professionals, mental health professionals, want to declare obsessive video game playing or computer game playing a mental illness, but they have decided that somebody who believes they're the opposite gender from their biology is not a mental illness. That makes no sense to me. But
well,
again,
if you declare this a mental illness, then you can, here's the thing, you can say, all right, well, you're disabled. So you'll have to stay home and we'll pay you to be online. Because this is your mental illness. Therefore, to keep you happy, we'll treat you. I mean, think about it. Addicts are now treated who are addicted to opiates. They're treated with a different opiate.
Yeah. Yeah, and sadly, you could say, well, what is the whole transgender issue is something that can be addressed, but it isn't something that once they go through the transition that it's all over and done with. They're on a lifetime of drugs because they've got to block their body's natural hormonal.
And I have no doubt whatsoever that young men and young women who are struggling with that identity issue, that I think that they are in genuine pain.
Oh, no question about it.
And when you've got a society that helps to
encourage
that belief that it's got to be even worse. But you're right. Very often when they transit to the other, they're not happy then either.
No.
It's like someone who, honestly, I mean, I started out at 230 plus pounds 2 years ago, but I was happy. I wasn't losing weight because I wanted to be happy. I was already happy. I was already really, really happy, just wasn't that healthy. Now I'm much healthier. I'm the same person on the inside that I was back then. I just looked different on the outside. That's the only difference.
Right.
But had I approached that thinking, if I can only get down to a size 2, I will be happy. No.
Yeah. And that's what many in that who deal with gender dysphoria find out. And their own statistics from supporters of LGBT, of people in the transgender who identify as transgender, show that more than 40% of them will attempt suicide at some point.
Oh, I know, and I think that is tragic.
They misdiagnose the cause because they say it's because the rest of the world is so unaccepting of them that we're causing them to be depressed enough to try to kill themselves. No, it's because there's an underlying morbidity that's manifesting in this desire to change gender. If I could just be a woman, I would be happy. And then once they get there, they find out, oh, I still have the same problems, and now I'm mutilated.
And honestly, making fun of people like that isn't helping at all. I mean, we need to love those people.
Right.
Love them.
Right. Because again, when you get right down to it, I think ultimately this is another manifestation of, like with the transhumanist movement. If we can just eliminate death, we'll be happy. If we can just eliminate sickness, we'll be happy. If we can just eliminate suffering, we'll be happy. Well, no, that won't cause it. It will just eliminate certain restraints on behavior.
Right.
And likewise, and in the process of so doing, we remove much of what makes us human. I mean, let's be honest. The fact that we are only given so many decades of life, if we're blessed, in some sense is a motivation to actually make something of your life. If you in the back of your mind, you're going to live forever. Well, why should I worry about this today or tomorrow or next year? Or
we do it already. Well, I'll make that decision tomorrow. Or I'll accept Christ later. Exactly.
You're right. We're bad enough at that already. Just imagine the procrastination that would take place and the way we would try to fill the boredom then if we didn't have the time constraints on us that we know. So look, I know that if all goes well, I mean, look, my father, and I don't want to get, morbid or depressing about this, but my father passed away when he was only 15 years older than I am now. So, I don't dwell on this. I don't think about it. Hey, come quickly, Lord Jesus. I'll go when it's my time to go, and I'll be ready to go. I pray, but I look forward to that day when I can see him with my own eyes.
Yes.
And I'm talking about Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Even if you had another 40 years ahead of you, which you might.
And I might at that because we've got better medicine these days, and I've started taking my, Dad, to his credit, changed his life after he had his heart attack, which he had when he was younger than I am now.
Yeah.
But thankfully, I got my cholesterol under control at a younger age than Dad did. Point being, even with that, if I got another 40 years, I know I'm not going to live forever.
No,
not designed to live forever. So if I'm going to do anything productive to leave for a future generation, I got to get on it today.
Exactly.
But if I knew I was going to live forever, why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother? I can do this anytime I want.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, I'll just sit here and play video games for the next, century or two.
Yeah. I could got, maybe in another 1,000 years or so, I'll do that.
Yeah. I'll go out and just see if I can run people over with my car. They're not going to die. Doesn't matter. I think that's the kind of world we would create if we were to somehow overcome the problem of death without regenerating the human heart.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Well, total left turn. Look up because it's coming down.
And we're not talking redemption.
No, we're not. We're talking about the Heavenly Palace, the Tiangong-1, China's first space lab, has been up there only since 2011. Apparently, it's coming down.
Yeah.
Mid-March, it'll be landing somewhere.
Well,
it's not that big. It's not like it's, remember Space Lab?
Mm-hmm. Was large.
Was pretty darn large. Well, this isn't that big, but it is going to come down, and the odds are it will crash in the ocean somewhere. But I have no idea what's on board it. I don't know what sort of power source it had, but it's coming down, and it will probably burn up in the atmosphere. But who knows what it will, sort of percolate down into whatever is below it.
Yeah, and the best guess that they have from China's space agency is somewhere between latitudes of 43 degrees north and 43 degrees south. There's Sam with his little robe again, walking across the floor. He's saying,
it's a cape, Dad.
You're already at more than an hour. You've gone too long. So, that's supposed to come down sometime in March. They're going to update the timing once they get more information. But they lost communication with it when? In 2017? No, 2016. Yeah, 2016. So its orbit is decaying, and it's going to come down and hit the Earth sometime in March. And we'll keep you posted on that, because that's something that would be you wouldn't want that landing in your backyard if you could.
Well,
help
the odds are it probably won't, but you never know.
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, that's the wrap up. That's what's happening right now.
Yep. Well, what else is going on this week? This coming Thursday, just want to remind you, this Thursday, January the 11th, is the nationwide rollout of the film Alien Intrusion, which features Gary Bates, the CEO of Creation Ministries International, plus some friends of ours, including Joe Jordan, Joyce Aarons, Guy Malone, talking about, and a new friend, Norio Hayakawa, talking about the UFO phenomenon and the alien abduction phenomenon, and why it is not extraterrestrial in nature, but extra-dimensional.
Right.
It's opening at more than 700 theaters around the country, but it's a special one-night showing, so it's not opening Thursday and then running for weeks and weeks. So speaking of procrastination, don't procrastinate. Get people there on Thursday the 11th, because it's not going to be released in DVD format for months.
Right. What's the website?
The website is alienintrusion.com, and you can go there, and there's a search engine which will find a close theater.
Put in your zip code and
So I know that close to us, there's one in Springfield and there's one in Rolla.
And we're out in the middle.
Not Rolla, Joplin.
Which is, within an hour's drive or less, we can find a place to go and watch it. We're out in the middle of nowhere. If there's a place here that we can go see it, then where you are, you can find it too.
Right.
And we highly recommend this movie. Gary Bates has been on not Sci Friday, but he was on Sci Friday.
He was on Sci Friday. He was also on a couple of daily updates where I've interviewed him both about the movie and about the recent release
and View from the Bunker.
And View from the Bunker from last week. But he's also the guest on Skywatch TV this week. So if you've got Skywatch TV's mobile app, You can watch them on the mobile app or Roku channel or Apple TV. You can watch that interview right now.
You can go to YouTube.
Well, Tom doesn't release the YouTube video until later in the week, so you probably won't see it on YouTube until about Thursday.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, but there's also a web-exclusive interview that is available now also at Roku, Apple TV, and the Skywatch TV mobile app, which is available for Apple devices, iOS, Windows Phone, Android phones and tablets, and the Amazon Kindle Fire tablet. There are free apps for all of those devices, and you'll find a link to the app stores at the Skywatch TV website.
And I love that app. I watch all of the Skywatch TV content on my iPad through that app.
Yeah. So it's a really convenient way to do it. But Gary Bates, 2 interviews with him about the film and why they produced the film, why Creation Ministries International is even dealing with the problem or with the UFO phenomenon in the first place. Well, because it's premised on the theory of Darwinian evolution. But anyway, all of that at the Skywatch TV, and we're really trying to promote this film because it's an important topic, especially when you look at what Americans believe. We've got more Americans out there who believe we're being visited by E.T. than believe in God as he is described in the Bible.
Exactly. And Bates' website is creation.com?
Creation.com.
So you can go to creation.com or you can go to alienintrusion.com.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again next week, God willing. Until then, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. P.I.D. Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod, www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is New Day Coming by Steve Grace, stevegrace.com. Our website is PIDradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, our books, our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
Gonna step up to the microphone, say it loud and clear. A better day is coming soon to get us out